So today I thought it would be good for us to talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on in Minnesota, most notably the shooting and killing of Alex Pretty. Now, I think it is totally reasonable to say that Alex Pretty in that specific situation should have walked away. He should have walked away alive. And I've watched the video multiple times and I've tried to watch breakdowns of it, what's really going on, and there seems to be miscommunication. There seems to be a lack of protocol. There seems to be something went wrong. Something went wrong, and one of the ICE agents takes his gun out of his belt loop, and after he is disarmed, he is shot. And so there was obviously some miscommunication and or negligence that was taking place in that specific altercation. And should Alex Pretty be alive today? Yes, he should. He should be alive. And whether or not that guy, did he not realize, the ICE agent that shot him, did he not realize what was going on? Did he not notice that he was already unarmed? Was he acting with malicious intent? Was he, or was this somewhat? Did he just lose his cool? Did he overreact? I don't know. I don't know. But the altercation should not have gotten to that point. The altercation should not have gone that far, given the circumstances. I think that's a totally reasonable observation and position to have. But I also think that while we are talking about the responsibility of ICE and of law enforcement officers, we should also be talking about the responsibility that people have when it comes to gun ownership and not putting themselves in compromising positions. And if you have gone through any kind of formal firearm training, there's going to be a number of different things that you will talk about. And the terminology might be different. The castle doctrine laws, the stand your ground laws are probably going to be different state to state. The gun carrying laws are going to be different from state to state. And so there might be some diverse opinions or diverse ways of explaining all of this. But there are a handful of things that you're going to be talking about, and two of them I want to touch on here. You have to be able to set some guardrails. If you're going to take upon yourself the burden and responsibility of carrying a firearm, if you're going to enjoy that right, you have to consider why you are doing that. What are the guidelines? What are the guardrails? And one of the things that we have talked about, not on this podcast, but different conversations I've had with people, is we are here to protect life. Whether it's the life of an innocent person, the life of somebody else, maybe it's our lives, but we are here to protect life. We're not here to do unnecessary harm. We are not here to intimidate. We are not here to brandish our weapons in a display of power or anything like that. We are here to protect life. And so there's a lot that goes into that. But when you put it that way, now you kind of have some guardrails and you understand what is the criteria, what are the guardrails, what are the lines in which we can operate here. How do we know when we're going too far? How do we know when we're approaching going too far? So we're here to protect life. That's the first thing. The second thing that we talk about is jeopardy. What is jeopardy? How do we know if we are in jeopardy? And how to avoid creating jeopardy for yourself. That is part of the responsibility that you have as a gun owner. And you could say that that's just kind of the responsibility that you have in society generally. Okay? You have a responsibility to not put yourself and compromising positions. And a situation where you think that you are in the right and you are acting within what is reasonable can easily escalate past that into something that's unreasonable. And so an example of this would be I get up out of bed at my own house and I look out the window and some guy is breaking the window of my car with a crowbar. And my wife's not in the car, my child's not in the car. He's not doing anybody any physical harm, he's not threatening anybody. He's just trying to get into my car so he can steal whatever. Well, if I go out there and I immediately just run out there and I shoot him and I kill that guy, I could still be held responsible for that situation because I escalated the level of jeopardy beyond what it should have been for that situation. He was just trying to break into my car and steal something. He wasn't trying to kill anybody or hurt anybody. So I just went out there and shot him in my driveway. That would not be good for me. That would not look good on me. And I could still be held accountable for that, even though I was not the one who initially committed the crime. I created a level of jeopardy for myself and for him that should not have existed. Or it could be something like I run out there with my gun and he sees my gun, he feels threatened, he pulls his gun, we start shooting at each other, some random bystander gets killed. And afterwards, he says, I was just trying to break into his car. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. He came out there threatening to kill me. He started shooting at me. And so I had to defend myself. He was trying to kill me, even though I was just trying to break into his car and rob his car. And so, again, I had created a level of jeopardy that existed that should not have existed. I did not appropriately meet the force that he was applying. I took things way too far. I overreacted. And so there is a responsibility that you have to protect yourself and not put yourself in jeopardy. Now, does that mean that Alex Pretty should have been killed at that moment? Does that mean he should have been killed during that altercation? No. But I will say this. If you arm yourself with a firearm and you go out and you harass law enforcement officers, you get in the way of their investigation and create physical altercations with them, you have created jeopardy for yourself. You have put yourself in a very, very bad situation. You have put yourself in a very compromising position. A situation where you don't know what is going to happen. Because the presence of a firearm, whether or not you have it drawn, whether or not you're carrying it, whether or not you're actually trying to shoot somebody, the presence of a firearm automatically raises the tension of the situation. And so if you're getting into altercations with the police, if you're getting into altercations with law enforcement, and you're carrying a firearm, that automatically adds stress, it adds tension, it adds jeopardy to the situation. And you have a responsibility. You, as the citizen, as the believer in the Second Amendment, he had every right. He had every right to carry a firearm, to conceal carry. From everything that I've seen, he doesn't have a criminal record. He was legally carrying a firearm. He's legally concealed carrying. All of that is fine. But it is not a smart move to overly engage with law enforcement, have negative interactions with law enforcement while you are armed. It is not a smart idea. You have put yourself in jeopardy. And as for what's happening generally in Minnesota, and I guess you would say in the United States, there was something that happened on the 23rd of January. I didn't even realize it. I didn't even know about it until after the fact, but there was a March for Life in Washington, DC, and I guess they do it every year. So a bunch of people come out and they march for life. They march in favor of the pro-life position. And I didn't even know that this was happening because I was, it finally popped up in my Instagram and I was like, okay, I didn't know that was going on. There wasn't much media coverage on it, which might be a problem in and of itself. But there's something that stuck out to me. You have thousands of people getting together to march, to protest. I don't even know if they would call it a protest, but they're doing this March for Life. Thousands of people are there, and you don't hear about it from the news, from the media. And the reason you don't hear about it was because nothing happened. Nothing happened. There was no harassing of police. There was no physical altercations with police. There was no getting in the way of official investigations. And so, you know what? Nobody got hurt. Nobody got killed. Everybody had a grand old time. And it is folded away into the history books with no tragedies or no violence or anything like that. And this speaks to a much larger truth about what's going on with ICE and in Minnesota and then in the country at large. And the way that this is being portrayed is that Minneapolis or the state of Minnesota is being invaded by ICE. Overly, they're being overly, I guess, attacked by ICE. And it's like the full force. They want you to think like the full force of the Trump administration or something. They're just going in there and they're just rounding up people. They're there to hurt people and to kill people, and that's what they want you to believe. But the reality is that ICE as a unit has been operating all over the United States. And the things that are happening in Minnesota, they're not happening in these other places. These other places that ICE is visiting where they're trying to investigate, they're trying to arrest these illegal immigrants, they're trying to clean up this mess that has been left. The kind of stuff that's happening in Minnesota, it's not happening in these other places. It's not happening in Dallas, Texas. It's not happening in Nashville, Tennessee. It's not happening in Jacksonville, Florida. It's not happening in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's not happening in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's there. It's in Minnesota. And so what's the difference? Is it because of overstepping and overreaching by ICE, or does it have more to do with the insane, overly radicalized individuals that are living in this left-wing city? And collectively, this seems to be a problem. It seems to be more so about the people in Minnesota than it does the presence of ICE, because ICE has had presence all over the place. And we have not had these kind of issues. And so I think that needs to be taken into consideration. That maybe what's going on in Minnesota, maybe it's Minnesota that is the problem. Maybe it's Minnesota that is stirring the pot more than it should be, because these shootings, these killings, these altercations, they're not really happening anywhere else. Certainly not to the same level. I mean, sure, there's protesting and things like that, but the stuff that's going on there is just it's completely out of hand. And as far as media coverage goes, there is an unofficial rule. It's something that rolls around in the back of my mind all the time. It's not an official rule that like I've pinned down for myself, but I do think there's a lot of wisdom in it, and it stems from a quote from Denzel Washington. And this was, and I'm gonna be paraphrasing, but this came from an interview that he was in a number of years back, and he was asked a somewhat political slash cultural question. I don't remember what the question was. Maybe it was a direct question about the media in general. And what Denzel Washington said was this, and again, I'm kind of paraphrasing it here. He said that everybody is concentrated on being first. They are not concentrated on being right. And one of the problems in our media, one of the problems in our culture is that it pays to be first. Doesn't necessarily pay to be right, it pays to be first. It pays to be overly emotional. It pays to be outraged. It pays to be reactive. It pays to react to every single little thing as it's happening. And so I always have this bit of wisdom rolling around in the back of my head. And sometimes I am reluctant to talk about certain topics or certain stories in the moment because sometimes my instincts are correct. Sometimes my initial observations are correct, but sometimes they're not. And as time goes on, you have context that is added to the story. You have video evidence that's added to the story, and you have more points of view as the story evolves come into light. And so, not only does it change the story, not only does it change the context, it could also make you look like kind of an idiot. Because if you're rushing around always trying to be first about every single little thing that happens, and you're trying to just react to it and be emotional and be too overly invested in being the first person to respond to every single little thing, you've kind of set yourself up to look like a fool. And in the case of the Alex Pretty situation, you have the media painting him to be just this, oh, he was just this innocent bystander and he never did anything wrong and he never hurt nobody and he was a good person and in all these different things. And then surprise, surprise, what do we find a few days later? Well, we find video of him getting into another altercation with ICE agents almost 2 weeks prior to his death. And so when you hear the media saying, well, he was just an innocent bystander, well, he didn't do anything wrong. He never did anything wrong. And then you watch the video and you're like, well, it kind of seems like we're dealing with a kind of a crazy person here. And that doesn't mean he should have been killed. That doesn't mean that he should have died on the data that he died. That doesn't mean, he should have walked away from that situation with his life. Okay, that's true. But you watch the video and he's seemingly spitting on ICE agents and he's destroying government property and he's kicking this government vehicle. And you're like, okay, this is kind of an unhinged person. This is kind of an overly emotional person. And it kind of changes the narrative a little bit that this guy was perpetually acting a fool. And I don't know why he wasn't in jail. He should have been in jail. Based upon what he did in that video, he probably should have already been in jail. He should have been thrown in jail 2 weeks before he was killed. Why wasn't he in jail? I don't know. I don't know the reasons. I don't know why they let him go. I don't know why he didn't face any kind of prosecution or any kind of consequences for what he was doing prior to the day that he died. I don't know. But we had somebody who was going out of his way on more than one occasion to create conflict with law enforcement officers. That is what we were dealing with here. And I get really tired of people pressuring, lobbying, pushing for outrage. Just all the time. Somebody's always like, you should be really upset about this. You should be overly emotional about that. You should be outraged about all the things that are going on. And do you know when you're dealing with When you're dealing with overly emotional people, when you're dealing with unhinged people, really the only kind of peace that they get or justification that they get or the only real payoff for them is for you as an individual to take part in their madness. They want you to take part in the craziness, the crazy world that they live in. They want you to be a part of that world. And when these people, they really look crazy. They really look crazy. And they think that they're correct. They think that they're in the right. They think that all of their outrage is justified and they can go around acting like a moron and they're totally unhinged. And then they try to catch somebody off guard, just like a normal person. They're like walking down the street and they're trying to video them and they're like, why don't you denounce ICE? You should denounce ICE. And they're like yelling and screaming and all these different things. And the person's just like, dude, I'm just walking to work. What do you mean? I'm trying to get lunch. Just leave me alone. And totally unfazed. Totally unfazed. And it sends these people into a frenzy because they can't imagine living in a world where they're not just being overly emotional about everything. When they come across a person who is a little bit more serious and in control of their emotions and their maybe you could say it's stoicism or whatever it is, that they're not going to be pushed around and bothered by your unhinged behavior. They can't handle it. They cannot fathom it, and it makes them crazy, more crazy than they already are. And again, I'm just really tired of people trying to make me feel like, well, you should feel this way and you should be outraged and you should be mad and you should be angry. It's like you should always be angry. And that's what these people are. They're just miserable all the time. That's what they are. And it comes from both sides of the political aisle, by the way. It's not just the left, it also happens on the right. If you remember, after the January 6th riots and that woman, Ashley Babbitt, was killed, you had conservatives come out and say things like justice for Ashley Babbitt, unjustified shooting, where's the outrage? We're not going to forget. She should have walked away. All of these different things. And for me, it was kind of like, well, should an unarmed woman have been shot and killed in that specific situation? Probably not. But at the end of the day, she was doing something she shouldn't have been doing in a place she shouldn't have been doing it in, breaking the law and making our country look stupid. And so it's very hard for me to be outraged about the outcome of that situation. It's very hard for me just to be insane and out of my mind and react emotionally to that situation, given the context of it. It's like, should Alex Pretty have been shot? No. Should Ashley Babbitt have died on that day? Probably not. Should they have walked away from that situation? Probably. Sure. But when you have people that put themselves in jeopardy, continuously create altercations with law enforcement, break the law, and they find themselves in these really bad situations, it honestly doesn't surprise me very much. And if the outcome, even if the outcome seems unjustified, and it's just hard for me to be outraged. Do you think that I'm going to go out here and march for these people? Do you think that I'm going to go out and protest the death of these people and put myself at risk for these people? I don't think so.